Good afternoon, one and all present here in this August forum. It is my honor and privilege to welcome you all to this research forum. I welcome our honorable founder chairman, Dr. A.C. Shanmugam, and our ever active and shrewd president, engineer Arun Kumar, to this research forum. Without the support, this research forum and its activities cannot be carried on. And I would like to say a few more things about this. This forum is really hard, really dear to this, to our founder, chairman, and our research and our president. Otherwise, they would not have named our institute as Educational and Research Institute, a research-oriented institute. So we are really thankful to our founder, chairman, and president for the constant support that they give here. And this forum, I also have the privilege and the opportunity to welcome our Vice, uh, Vice Chancellor, Dr. S. Geeta Lakshmi ma'am, who always strives to place our university on the universal map of institutes which are oriented towards research and excellence. I fondly invite our registrar, Dr. C.B. Palnivelu, and our ever supportive joint registrar, Dr. Malini Pandey, who is always very active and very supportive to the English department in whatever we do and say. So I send my warm welcome to her. And in the in our university, the English department is
Good afternoon,
placed
madam.
in
Good
placed
afternoon.
in good afternoon. The English department is placed in three different campuses, and all these campuses are managed by three different people, and one is Dr. Pushkala Ramani, who is in the main campus. She manages the English department, and Miss Julie Elizabeth, she is managing the English department in the Stage 2 campus, and in the E&S campus, it is being managed by me. So, and as such, we are in the E&S campus, and whatever we do needs to be supported and good should be acknowledged by the authorities, and that is being done by our um, joint register Dr. D.B. Jabaraj. And without he is the beacon light of our activities, and without his support, we cannot do anything anywhere for that matter. And I also thank and I also welcome Dr. Merlin Satyaraj, who happens to be the connective link between the English department and the stream of the university activities. And I'm happy that I'm able to welcome everybody here at this August moment. And I also welcome the participants who want to gather knowledge and which knowledge that they can use for doing any research. So I'm happy that we have got an eminent speaker and a research person among us who is none other than Dr. Sushma N. Murthy. She is from Christ University, and I was drawn towards her knowledge by reading her article in one of the Scopus magazines. And I'm happy that I had that opportunity to read that article, and because of that only I could source her knowledge, and I was able to bring her down here. And uh, and after that also, I can even say her figurative title, the wraps and webs of research culture into the academic fabric, weaving research culture into academic fabric. So it has made me much more excited, and I'm really very enthusiastic to hear what she has to share with us, from which we can learn and do something. And I thank. And before winding up my welcome address, I would like to say that there is two premise on which I am organizing this particular meeting for the faculties of our English department. The reason being, one is that the university insists upon such a forum, such a club in each and every department to carry on the research activities. The second one is it is a basic psychological thinking. Even in our own house, if we give you any advice to our children, they don't take the advice. And especially when the children are in the elementary classes, you seem to know that. When the teacher says or somebody else says that, they are they are ready to listen to other people's ideas. So like that, I have been doing research, and any idea can give you the research spark. I am a person who is interested in the oral communication and making the students speak in good English, how they can enhance their oral communication. These are the items that I think dear to my heart. And my research articles have been mostly based on these observations about the students. And I have given nearly 25 papers, only 3 only related to literature. All the 22 are related to English language teaching and how this task-based teaching has helped the students. Even the lack of digital competence among the teachers was able to help me to bring one paper, and that was published in a Scopus journal also. So this is how the things go. But when you give the advice, the nearer ones, they don't take it that seriously. When if somebody else from outside, a person like Dr. Sushma, with their knowledge, I think she may motivate and instigate our faculty to do good research. So that is the reason I have brought her in here. Thank you, ma'am, for accepting my invitation. Now, after the certain formalities, now they will call you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, ma'am. It is my privilege to invite Dr. Pushpala, Dean, Literary Seminary, to share a few words.
Ma'am, ma'am is not here or what?
Yes, ma'am is
She's
not here,
here,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Priyadarshini,
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
yeah, you can
Sir.
introduce ma'am to the
Yes,
audience.
yes, yes, sir.
Okay, okay, ma'am. Now I call Ms. Priyadashini to introduce our resource person.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm glad to welcome our chief guest. It's my great pleasure to welcome our chief guest on behalf of Dr. MGR Education and Research Institute. Dr. Sushma is an associate professor in the Department of English at Christ University. She teaches general studies, post-colonial and world literatures, cultural studies, and British literature. She was affiliated to the University of Montreal under the Shastri Doctoral Research Fellowship in 2007 to 8, and she has secured a doctoral degree in 2014 for her dissertation, The Burnish Phoenix Lesbian Aesthetics in the Works of Nicole Brassard, from the University of Mysore. Her research interests include queer theory and literature, feminist translation studies, psychoanalytical feminism, and trauma narratives by women. Her publications include research articles on feminist translation, transgender aesthetics, and queer theory. And currently, she has completed a major research project on a select popular fiction of Anushya Shankar, who is popularly known by her pen name Triveni, a prominent psychoanalytical feminist writer in Canada. The project examines psychocultural aspects of women's mental health disorders with heightened focus on the gendered narrativization of trauma in cases of hysteria. Now I welcome our chief guest, Dr. Sushma, to share. to enlighten us. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Dr. Chandrasena Rajeshwaran. Many thanks at the beginning of the session for having invited me and to share whatever few insights I have about research. I have been into the university scenario for only 13 years, and I think I am among very eclectic senior scholars and teachers, and I'm really grateful that I'm here. And let me see what best I can do to share my limited exposure to research and the insights that I have been able to glean from teaching at a university and pursuing my own research. So it gives me immense pleasure to talk to all of you today, and to be part of this community at Dr. MGR Institute. And without much ado, I would like to probably start the session. I will start sharing the screen. So it's about 2:10 now. So I will take about an hour's time, if that's okay with you, followed by interaction. Okay. So in the middle, I might stop here and there to ask you a few questions. Please feel free to put your comments and questions in the chat box. Of course, when I go full screen, I won't be able to see the chat, messages, but I will come back to it later. Okay. Am I audible and, am I clear? Is my voice clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So I will start sharing my screen. Okay, so I will not put this in full screen mode because I have observed that in Google Meet, if I put it on full screen, you will not be able to see the slides. Or shall I do it immediately so that you can tell me if it doesn't work later? Okay, please stop me. So I'm putting it in full screen now. Okay, are you able to see the screen now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. So you already know that I have titled my presentation WARPS and WEFTS. This is a very interesting metaphor that, I gleaned sometime back when I was a student. I was actually taking home tuitions for a home science student, and that is where I came across this term. And I mean, that has stayed with me ever since. Okay. So it comes from weaving, basically, right? So you have the overlapping of threads when you weave, and those are the warps and wefts, right? And I found it very interesting, especially in this context, to talk about warps and wefts, because that is what research is all about today, right? It is about interdisciplinarity. It is about collaboration. It is about reaching beyond our disciplinary boundaries, right? And it is about integrating a lot of things. So the two important words that come out immediately when you think of research culture is, one is integration and the other one is collaboration. Okay, so I will go into greater detail with the slides that are coming on. But to begin with, this is the title slide, and this is our roadmap today for our discussion on integrative research. Okay, so to begin with, we will talk about the need for research. Why do we have to talk about research? Although it might seem like, oh my God, why do we have to talk about it? I think it's important to talk about it. Okay, and what are the integrative practices that we can bring into our research as academics? So the second most important idea that I will be dealing with is collaborative action research, right, which is based on interdisciplinarity. And then I'm going to look at research based on my own, you could say, practices of research, based on my own exposure to research, or based on my own hard, lessons that I've learned the hard way, right? Hard-earned lessons, you could call them. Because see, to begin with, research looks very huge and demanding and impossible to do, right? But then you see, sometimes you have to break it down. And that is where interdisciplinarity and collaboration becomes very important, right? And that is the reason why I'm going to look at research through three different frameworks. One is research in the English classroom. So all of us as English teachers can begin with research in the classroom, right? Your classroom teaching can translate into research. That is going to be my first, component. The next component, of course, is a component that all managements are pushing for, UGC is pushing for, the entire world, and even international universities are pushing for, right? It could be for promotions, it could be for NAC points, It could be for the fact that you are a research-based university, and research is integral to research, as Dr. Chandrasena mentioned, right? So more and more impetus is given today for publications in Scopus Index journals, right, or Web of Science journals. So research articles for journals, that is going to be the second component that I'll be addressing. And then, of course, I will be looking at research projects, because more and more research projects are now coming out of important institutions, NGOs, foundations, foreign universities. All of them are looking for collaborative research, and this is the right time for us to reach out to them, right? And research projects are a very important means of extending your research beyond your doctoral thesis, beyond your PhD research. Okay. So, and finally, I will touch upon very briefly research consultancy, how all of us can become research consultants, because that is precisely what we should be trying to do as academicians, right? Who are not just teaching, but who are also consultants, right, in research. Okay. I will come to all of these components, but to begin with, why would you talk about research as teachers? Why would you talk about research as academics? Okay. And why is it that it is so difficult for us to grapple with research? Okay. So I belong to a deemed university as much as all of you belong to a deemed university, right? And I cannot understate the importance of research and research publications, right, in such universities, because to a large extent, our existence as universities depends upon the accreditation, bodies, right? Especially NAC, right? So a NAC gives a lot of importance to research and research publications. In fact, close to 1/3 of your points, right, by NAC will come to you from research. Okay. So how progressive are you in research? How many publications do you have? How many citations do you have? Right. And is this university generating knowledge? That is what they want to look at, or they want to know. Right. And even if you're good with infrastructure, with teaching, with student, teacher, interaction, if you're good with extension activities and all of the components, and if you're falling back on research, that can pull you down. Right. And we all know what it means for NAC to give us our accreditation scores, and we are more or less dependent on NAC to retain our university statuses. Right. And that is a harsh truth, right? A hard-hitting fact that all of us have to digest. So it might appear like the universities in which we are functioning, is actually, they are forcing us, or they are, making it mandatory for us to publish, right? That is one way of looking at it, but that would be a very negative approach, right? I would say that as teachers, right, as academicians, one of the primary roles that we have to perform is that of research. We are also researchers. Right? And why do we have so much of fear, or why do we have so much of distance from research? Why does it take so much of time for us to publish in, a Scopus indexed, your article to be published in a Scopus indexed, publication? Why does it take so much of time? It's because, right, we tend to think of teaching as something that is very different from research. Right? And we tend to look at research as a higher order, thinking, right? And teaching as more of a practice, which is tied up with learning and with students, right? So there is basically a divide that for very many reasons that academia has perpetuated for the longest time, saying that teaching and research are two different components, and research is something that not everybody can do, and teaching is obviously something that you begin with. Right? I know many researchers who cannot teach very well, right? They are very good, brilliant researchers. They have excellent publications, but when it comes to the classroom, right, they are, extremely, poor teachers, right? And similarly, there are very good teachers, right, who cannot take that next step towards research. In fact, there are faculty who go through their entire careers not doing a PhD, or not wanting to do research, and not wanting to get into the constraints of research. The first thing that we need to do is to dismantle this divide. So if you look at the top, Ivy League universities, you look at universities who have done well in research, right? They have done well in research precisely because they have dismantled this divide, right? And they have looked at research, and they have broken down research into very, very small, doable units, right? So the first important thing that we need to realize is, right, research means action, right? Research, there is no action without research, and there is no research without action. And research is not the, sterile existence that we think of, where you sit in a library and you pour over, tomes and tomes of books, right? And you write a literature review, and then you build up your arguments and you submit a dissertation, which again goes back onto the shelf. And trust me, a lot of our dissertations are lying on the shelf and gathering dust, right? And this is not to put down anybody or demotivate anybody, but I ask myself this question many times: what happened to my research after my PhD? Because I completed my research in 2014, right? And there was, suddenly that relief. Oh my God, I'm done with PhD. Now, I don't have to worry about research, right? So that is the first, because see, the idea of PhD itself, or the experience of PhD itself, is so grueling sometimes that we are just happy that it's over in 4 or 5 years or 6 years. Some people take 8 years, right, depending on the guides, and we finish our dissertations, and then we heave a huge sigh of relief and we say, oh my God, research is over now, right? This is precisely because we have been trained to think that research is a PhD degree, right? And research is something that, is required for you to apply for certain positions. But research is actually a lifelong process for a teacher, because before we go into a classroom, what do? We prepare for class. We read up, right? Especially when you're teaching literature, you read the social background, you read about the political interface of literature and, the history of the times. You look up, other texts that were written during the period. You introduce them to movements, you introduce them to ages, you introduce them to, the socio-political, atmosphere of the text, or the atmosphere behind the text. And all of this is research. And sadly, right, we do research only when we have to go to class, and after class, right, we don't go back to it, right? Or we go back to our notes and build up on our notes every time we go back to class, but we don't do anything with the research that we take to class, right? So it's very important for us to realize that research needs to be situated in the experiential, right? And we need to contextualize research. Like Dr. Chandrasena was talking about, how she translated a lot of her experience of teaching English to students to, articles in Scopus Index journals. And that's a brilliant example for us to start with, right? So what is research? Research is basically situating knowledge in the experience, right? Why are you publishing a research paper, right? Why are you publishing your research? Why are you writing what you have found out? It's important that this dissemination of knowledge occurs so that other people can benefit from it. So research has a very important social outreach component. Research has a very important component of social responsibility, which a lot of us have forgotten about. Because for us, to a lot of us, research is degrees, research is number of publications, research is a few scores from the accreditation bodies. I would say that research is integral to every academic and the academic work that we do. The question is, how do we translate that research, right, into a publication, into a project? How do we, for example, if you're not very fond of, say, writing a research article, how would you, take your research further? Where would you publish it, right? Would you write to a newspaper? Would you write to magazines? Would you write on social media, right? That is also research, okay? And that is how we become public intellectuals. I will come back to that a little later. So there is this notion of research as something epistemological, as a knowledge system that we are, digging into and searching into and coming out with new findings. And that is where it remains. And therefore, there is this divide or disconnect between epistemology, which is the idea of thinking about research, and ontology, which is the application of research into real, situations, into real context, into the experience of humanity itself. Okay, so research is basically a means of creating new knowledge systems, right? But what do we do with these systems? Do we extend them to the society? Do we use them or apply them into contexts where they will be useful, right? All my research up to now, as you can see, based on my introduction, is in the field of gender, right? So, but sometimes I sit and ask myself this question: what has all this research led to? What has it done for the actual gender divide or binary that you see out there in society? Recently, I was in a panel discussion where, in fact, it was on Women's Day. I was in a panel discussion with a Rotaract club in Kolkata, and I had somebody with me who is, her name is Swara Patel. She is actually a researcher, right, and a student in one of the universities in the US. And she is about, you could say, 20, 21 years old. She's still, finishing her graduation there, right? And she is somebody who has created something called the Period Society, which looks at menstrual hygiene and menstrual needs of women, especially at the grassroots level, especially in the rural areas. And when this young girl was talking about, right, menstrual hygiene, right, and why there is so much of shame associated with the woman's body when she menstruates, right, and how that itself becomes a huge barrier, right, in maintaining menstrual health for most women, right, and how our organization is reaching out or generating funds for these women. That is when I, sat there and thought about my existence. Is my existence, right, justifiable? What have I done with all my understanding of gender, all my research on gender? Have I really done anything for society? Have I reached out to society? Have I brought about policy changes? Have I done anything to change the way in which people think about women and men? Okay, not to mention other forms of gender. That is when I realized that it was high time that I did something where my research reached out to the world at large. And that is what research has to do, like Kay Levin says here, right? Kurt Levin is somebody who came up with this very interesting equation which changed the way in which we thought about, science and mathematics, right? So he says there's no action without research and there's no research without action. So can my research make a difference to the real world is the question that we all need to ask. And that is when research will enter into our classrooms. Research will enter into our existence as intellectuals, as academics, belonging to a university, belonging to a learning space, right, with students, right? So it's important for us to focus on the real there, to move away from the systems, right, or the theoretical frameworks or the literature review that we conduct. All of these are merely supporting factors, right? But ultimately, what do you do with the findings of your research? What do you do with the analysis of a particular hypothesis or argument? And once you have proved your hypothesis, once you have drawn your conclusions, where do you go from there? Where does research go from there is a very important question that we need to ask. And most of the time, we don't go beyond, right, the actual constraints of research or practices of research to the actual world because of our disciplinary boundaries, right? Because we don't apply, we don't integrate, we don't collaborate, and we don't extend our research, right? And it's very important for us to do this, right? So that's my understanding of women in literature, right? Help me to collaborate with, say, public policy, right? Are you all able to see the slide on dismantling the divide, teaching and research?
Yes, ma'am.
Priyadarshini?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Are
ma'am.
you able to see the slide? Yeah.
Yes,
Sorry.
ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the question that I need to ask. So if somebody had walked up to me 3 years back and told me, Sushma, your research can make changes to public policy or can bring interventions into the way in which we think about women, I would have probably, laughed at them, or I would have probably questioned what they're saying, and I would have found it extremely difficult to believe, right? But today, right, I will give you two examples, right? One is a research project on the women street vendors in Bangalore, right, who sell tarkari and other goods, right? So you have seen these women pushing carts and selling things. They are street vendors, right? So there is a project, an upcoming project on street vendors in Bangalore, right? And as a literature student, I can narrativize their experiences. I can get them to talk about their lives, right? And I can narrativize those stories, right? To an extent where probably tomorrow with somebody from economics and somebody from public policy, somebody say from empirical social sciences, like for example sociology, right, can collaborate with me, and we can actually present a report based on these women's experiences, right, to the necessary authorities, and try to see if we can bring a minimum wage policy or some kind of visibility to their problems, for example, right? That is one project that I am looking at which I hope that I will be able to work on, which I'm applying for. The other project that I'm also looking at is women in media right now in Indian society, right? So we know that there is a lot of objectification of women, right, in media. And we talk about it, we analyze it. We talk about the male gaze. We talk about how women are objectified and sold as commodities, right? And how there is so much of sleaziness on screen, right? But we are not aware that there is an advertisement, control authority, right? Which can actually bring down these advertisements, which there is a censorship board, right, which can control the content that goes into advertising, right, especially in broadcast media, right, including television. So it's important for us, right, to do research in areas where we can make a difference to the questions that we are asking, right? So those are two examples that I wanted to give you, two projects that I'm applying for based on, right, experiential, right, conclusions and outcomes, right? So I do not know how effective I will be, but what I can try to do is, extend my understanding of a human condition. It could be gender, it could be caste, it could be race, it could be, indigeneity, post-coloniality, historicity, things that we all look at as literature students. These can be used to collaboratively, look at other aspects of the same area of research, right? So most of us are trained to think that, oh my God, I'm dealing with literature. Why would I look at economics? Or why should I look at the socio-political conditions? Why should I look at public policy? Why should I look at women's rights, for instance? That's not my job, right? And if you're going to think that way, then probably, our research is going to be restricted to the journals to which we are writing, right, to our PhD dissertations, which are going to lie there unless there is another scholar who walks up and looks for a dissertation in my area of research, which is not very likely to happen, which may not happen very often. Okay. So can you see the next slide?
Oh, ma'am.
Can you see the dog and the
No,
cat?
we are
No,
only the first slide is there.
ma'am, we can't
Oh,
see
okay.
the
That's
slide, ma'am.
what, yeah, just a minute.
Sir, not visible.
Yeah, this is the problem. Are you able to see now, ma'am?
No, ma'am.
Okay, I will make it, I will not make it full screen.
Present,
It's the
ma'am.
problem that I foresaw that always happens with Google Meet for me. I don't know why. Okay, are you able to see the slide now?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes,
yes.
Are you able to see the cat and the dog?
Yeah,
yes,
ma'am.
yes,
Yes,
yes.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So I put this visual here. I mean, I have used it frequently because I find this very interesting. Because this is what our disciplinary boundaries do to us, right? So we like to think that cats and dogs don't get along, right? And you look at this cat and a dog, there is a glass window and they're looking at each other through a glass window. They're able to see each other, but they are not able to break this and, go beyond this barrier, right? So to a lot of, to a great extent, a lot of times, it so happens that we are all departmentalized. Our knowledge is departmentalized, especially in universities. So there is a lot of research which talks about why we need to communicate and collaborate across academic disciplines, right? And how we need to use research to counter departmentalization of knowledge, okay? So how do we do this? How do we bring research to a space where we deal with real life contemporary issues? How do we bring research into our classrooms so that research becomes part of our experiential learning, right? And it becomes action based. And that is what we mean by action research or action based research, right? Action research is not just going out into the field and conducting a field study, right? And in implementing the results of a survey or an interview, right, into quantitative data and analyzing that data. No. Research, action-based research or action research is research that happens as you are, teaching, especially in English classrooms, right? So for example, let me give you an example. If you want to use gaming as a technique to teach language skills, vocabulary skills to students, so you develop language based games, right? So you use language games or language-based games, right, to teach students English. So what do? You develop an app probably, right? and you get your students to install that app on their phones, right? And using technology, you allow students to learn through an interactive medium, which is gaming, right? And you collect the results, you collect the data as you are teaching, right? And based on the learning outcomes in the classroom, you develop your conclusions, and later, you convert that into a paper, right? Or you undertake it as a project, which you're submitting to an agency which is funding you, right? So the idea is probably, right, to introduce more of ICT, right, into the English classroom, or to bring in more technology enabled learning or learner centered pedagogy in the classroom. That could be your project, for example. Okay, so that is action research. And what better place to do action research than in the English classroom, right? Because learning a language is a constant interactive process, right? And that is where the research happens. The research happens as you are teaching and as the students are learning. You don't have to really go out into the field. Not many of us have language labs. For example, even Christ University does not have a language lab. It might be difficult for you to believe. And I hope that Dr. MGR Institute has, a language lab, because a language lab is a space where a lot of action-based research can go in, right? So we have a lot of potential for research within our classrooms, which we need to understand and analyze. So here, if you are looking at a project where you're looking at gaming, for instance, or you're looking at, use of ICT or blended learning in the classroom, or you're looking at a hybrid model of teaching where you're teaching both online and offline, which is a good time, right? Right now is a very good time for that, because a lot of us are teaching from home, working from home. A lot of us are probably in colleges where you have, say, 20% of the class there and the rest of them are online, right? And how does it work to use technology and live teaching? How does it work to use technology and teach from home? How does it work to teach something, right, using a digital platform? So right now is the time when you can actually send in a lot of articles to journals and research articles based on experiential, learning, right? Because teachers are also learning as they are teaching, right? And all the data that you need, all the, field work that needs to go into it is right there happening right in the classroom, whether it's a digital platform or a live, class, it happens with the students. Right. So one of the important 21st century skills, which is also part of our graduate attributes, which are part of every, policy, right, of, university managements, right, have made sure that we have graduate attributes, right? Critical thinking and problem solving are two very important 21st century skills, which are also graduate attributes, which means that we have to train our students to think critically and to solve problems, right? And undertaking an action-based research in class, right, and getting the students to apply critical thinking and problem-solving skills can help you to come up with very interesting research in the classroom. Okay, so the most important thing that we are looking at is going beyond our disciplinary boundaries to create open-ended, non-hegemonic, post-disciplinary dialogues. It is not even interdisciplinary, right? So interdisciplinary concerns are concerns where, right, the disciplinary boundaries are still intact and you come up with new knowledge based on the interaction with these disciplines. But what is post-disciplinary? It means that you are, not even speaking from within your disciplinary boundary, that you're able to generate a new vocabulary based on the interactions that you have with other so-called departments and disciplines. So is it possible for us to collaborate in such a way that we have this kind of interdisciplinary research? Okay, so very, very quickly, I will not dwell on this slide. Literature is the most interdisciplinary of all areas of learning, of all areas of study, of all disciplines. In fact, literature integrates sociology, it integrates economics, society, political science, right? History, okay? And there is no human condition that we do not explore. Okay, so it is a very self-reflexive approach to human experience. And I want you to look at this particular quotation by Wallace Stevens. He says, it is not only that the imagination adheres to reality, but also that reality adheres to the imagination, and that the interdependence is essential. Right? So literature is that space where imagination and reality are constantly in a dialogue, and they are therefore interdependent. Right? So what better way to look at the experiential? What better way to say, for example, look at partition history, right, than through the partition narratives that we have of, say, Manto or Urvashi Butalia, right? Look at all the writers, or even Salman Rushdie, for example. So all of them make it possible for us to look at history through the lens of the experiential, which is the lens of memory, which is the lens of identity, which is the lens of the conflict of, religions, which is the lens of human experience, which is related to the human condition. Right? So most of the history textbooks will not tell you what people actually experienced during the partition, but partition narratives will tell you that. Right? So what does it mean for you to bring a historiographic approach to literature, right? To history through literature? What does it mean to rewrite history through literature? Because that is precisely what we are doing, right? So this is a very, very, very interesting quotation which I like by Nabokov. He says, between the wolf in the tall grass and the wolf in the tall story, there is a shimmering go-between. That go-between, that prism is the art of literature. So literature should allow you to cross boundaries. Literature should allow you to travel or transit between imagination and reality. That is literature. Right? Literature is not, I mean, what all of us thought when we took up literature. I took up literature because I thought, okay, I can forever read books and forget the world. Right? Sadly, I think 1 or 2 weeks into my MA program in the university, I realized that there is nothing as realistic as literature. Right? And literature exposes you to all kinds of human cultures, human conditions, right? Human characters, right? And there is nothing more real than the imaginative world of literature, because it constantly challenges your limits. It constantly allows you to look at humanity through different lenses, right? And it constantly sensitizes you to different experiences and, human conditions. I don't think there is a single person in this group that we are today, right now in the afternoon today, that who is insensitive. All of us are very sensitive to the human condition. And that is because of the kind of exposure that we have had to different kinds of literature. So what better space than the English classroom to actually begin with research is the question that I'm asking you, right? And you have to ask yourselves. So one case study that I would like to present to you from my own classroom, where, right, my post-colonial literatures class, is a poem called The Dodo by Hilaire Belloc, right? And this is actually from the Bad Child's Book of Bees, published in 1896. Okay. And this is a poem that I use in class to talk about a lot of different concerns, right? So I'll just read out the poem very quickly. The dodo used to walk around and take the sun and air. The sun yet warms his native ground. The dodo is not there. The voice which used to squawk and squeak is now forever dumb. Yet may you see his bones and beak all in the museum, right? So this is a poem written by an Anglo-French writer, Hilaire Belloc, right? And obviously we all know that there's nothing as dumb as the dodo or as dead as the dodo, because it's an extinct bird, right? But when you actually look at the dodo and its history and the reasons why the dodo became extinct, that is where you will realize that it was large-scale colonization, exoticization of the dodo meat, right? And, the dodo was a low-lying creature. It was a flightless bird, right? And when the Dutch colonized, Mauritius, to which it is endemic. It is endemic to the Mauritian Islands, by the way, right? And some parts of Australia too, right? What did the colonizers do? They completely destroyed the habitat, right? And even, this was a land which didn't even have reptiles, right? And imagine what happened to the dodos when colonization happened, right? And the entire island was colonized, right? So this is a very interesting text, right, for students to think about history, ecology, culture, and children's literature, right? And it allows them to look at the ecological balance, ecological conservation, and ecological narratives that we need today in the face of neocolonialism, which is precisely what we are doing today, right, to a lot of creatures and to a lot of habitats around the world, right? So when we introduce texts such as these in class, what happens? The students, right, do not just discuss it as a poem, right, but they look at it as a context for experiential learning and possibly, right, some kind of field work, right? So the dodo is a metaphor for a lot of cultures that are disappearing. The dodo is a metaphor for a lot of cultural practices that are disappearing, languages that are disappearing, right? In fact, when I look at my grandmother's life, for example, and my life, so many things have disappeared from the kitchen. So many recipes have disappeared. So many ways of looking at the world have disappeared. So many ways of understanding, say, for example, the female body have disappeared. Because today we look at the doctors to help us understand our bodies, right? But probably our grandmothers had a better understanding of their bodies than we do, even without, school education, perhaps, right? And that is because, right, their systems enabled them to understand what food was good for their body and at what time they had to eat something, right? In what season did they have to consume certain kinds of food, right? How do you take care of a child when it is born, for instance, right? How many of us have the ability to do that? Right? So thanks to a lot of Western knowledge systems, a lot of our traditional systems are getting eroded. And the dodo is a metaphor for all of these things, right? So when you take a text like the dodo to class, right, you can motivate students to do research on related areas of colonial or neo-colonial influence, right? And the dodo itself is so significant because it is one of the first birds to become extinct, after which you have nameless, numberless birds that have become extinct, creatures that are becoming extinct, right? Every day as we are sitting and talking, right, some creature goes extinct in some part of the world, right? So is it possible for us, therefore, to look at, look at this picture, you see the dog and the cat have come closer, right? So what are the disciplines that are integrated in the text? So if you're looking at a piece of literature, right, it is not just literature, but it is a reflection of different civilizations, right?
Huh?
Would you please mute yourself? I think somebody has unmuted and there is some disturbance. Yeah. Okay. So is it possible for us to identify themes, issues, contexts of contemporary relevance? So encourage students to critically think about these things, right? And it's not enough if they just do a lot of critical thinking. They also have to solve the problems, right? So what ways in what ways can you say, for example, preserve puppetry, which is going out of the, in fact, you see puppets made of wood and cloth and all kinds of puppets made out of animal skin being sold on the pavements or the footpaths, right? Because the puppeteers have gone out, right? A lot of instruments have gone out of currency, right? Although the music remains, a lot of tribal music remains, but a lot of tribal instruments, right, have gone out of currency because the tribes themselves are endangered, right? So, for example, say in Tamil, right, you have the Kuthu, right, which is a dance form, which is very endemic, indigenous to Tamil Nadu, right? And we all know about the Jallikattu movement and what was the response to animal rights activists when they said you cannot have Jallikattu, right? So Jallikattu was almost, I think, equal to Tamil identity at that point of time. Similarly, if you ask me in Bangalore, what is it that is very indigenous? I would say it is the Karaga, right? Which is a dance form, right? And that is not the face of Karnataka or, Bangalore, right? So what becomes part of culture or what is projected or promoted as culture is very upper class. It is very hegemonic, right? So these are spaces which can be used to actually, talk to people. So for example, if I want to, look at a particular art form or artists, right? Say street performers, right? And, and look at their lineage of art, for example, right? Or I want to look at a particular space where the ecological balance is disrupted, right? Or I want to look at conservation, right? Or recycling, right? I want to look at sustenance of ecosystems, right? So look at what the dodo can do to break your disciplinary boundaries. And this is what we need to do as literature, teachers and academics in the class. So the first step for them to do, therefore, after they make their findings, it's not just an assignment that they submit to the class teacher, right? So can they write an article about it to the local newspaper? Can they publish it in your university magazine? Can they put it up on social media? Can they form an awareness campaign or group, right, which creates awareness beyond the campus, right? So these are possible ways in which research can be done, and you can collaboratively do it with students, right? You can guide them, you can get them to do things for society, and what you have done with the students can become a research article, right, which you can choose to publish either in a Scopus Index journal or in the local newspaper, so that people have more awareness about what, say, MGR Institute is doing. Right? A lot of Christ University students, I can give you this example, have actually gone and, they have used art to clean up spaces. Basically, they have painted walls in spaces where waste was dumped, right? Right? They have created slogans and, visual texts, very powerful visual texts, which say what it means for waste to be dumped and not managed, right? And why people need to manage waste. Okay? So, is your classroom participatory? Is your classroom learner-centered? Is your classroom, based on content creation and not just dissemination of knowledge, where the teacher just stands there and talks and the students just absorb everything, and we don't really have a dialogue with the students, right? So is there a social interface to the pedagogy that you take in class? And if you introduce a social interface, if you choose texts, for example, which are able to bring this social interface, then it's possible to begin with research, collaborative research with students in the English classroom. Okay, so let me go to the next component, which is what we all are professionally looking at largely, which is research articles in reputed journals. And, look at Ernest Rutherford, right? One of the greatest scientists, right? He says, I have to publish, I have to keep going, as there are always people on my track. I have to publish my present work as rapidly as possible in order to keep in the race. The best printers in this road of investigations are Becquerel and the Curies. So who is he competing with, right? So if your research does not get disseminated, if your research does not get published, right, then you are way, way, way behind the others. So you can imagine the competition that there is in this scientific field of inquiry, right? In this field of scientific inquiry, and you can see, the need to publish, right? And we know that recently, right, the findings of, research on the coronavirus, right, by Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, and of course, AIMS, Delhi, and other top institutions in India, they have actually changed the way in which we look at the coronavirus and the spread of coronavirus. And it has been useful in, for example, Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore, right, has come up with a model for, the government of Karnataka to take decisions on whether lockdown should be imposed or lockdown should not be imposed. What is the percentage of population that you have to look at when you have to realize the amount of risk? So right now, from Monday, we are actually unlocking the system. Right, we are in a lockdown till 14th, but we are gradually unlocking, right, from 14th, and that is based on research by a team, right, from Indian Institute of Science, right, and these are students and research scholars and professors who have collaboratively used, right, research on the virus to create social awareness and to change, right, decisions taken by the government. Right now, they are part of the task force of the Karnataka government. So you can imagine what research can do or what research should do. The question that we need to ask is my research really doing this, right? Is my research really doing anything to the society around me? Apart from just publishing, conclusions, findings, right? And apart from the fact that, yes, I have a publication in a reputed journal, what is research actually doing? That is the question that we need to ask. And that is the reason why, right, the sooner you publish your findings, the more immediate its effects on certain ways of thinking, certain ways of being in the outside world. Okay, so this is what we are all afraid of, right? This is a this is a troll, right, which says most scientists regarded the new streamlined peer review process as quite an improvement. So this is what we are afraid of when we are I think Dr. Chandrasena, will tell us, right, how difficult the peer review process is, especially if you're publishing in a Scopus reviewed journal, right, or a Web of Science journal. The peer review process is very rigorous. You see, there are people who are waiting there to hack you, right, with an axe. There are people ready to, bash your head down with a club, right, and people with swords and all kinds of things, right. And this is literally the death of you. And this is what is very scary. Will my paper get accepted? And we have so many rejections, right? People send back your papers and say your paper is rejected, or they goes through so much of rigorous review that you send 3 drafts, 4 drafts, it comes back to you. And that is when you say, oh my God, I'm not going to publish a paper, it's too much for me, right? And by the time you reach, right, the paper accepted goal, right, you might be literally be beaten into pulp, right? So I mean, this is a funny, humorous visual, but then this is exactly what we are thinking when we are thinking of publishing. But it need not be like this, right? So I will give you a few tips, right, on what kind of research articles are likely to be more published, or what is the process like, right? So journals encourage different types of research. So normally, what do we think? We think that, okay, literature students, we think, okay, qualitative, analytical, use discourse analysis and literary analysis, you're done. But that is not the only thing that you can publish. Did you know this? You can publish book reviews, you can publish case studies. I just now gave you the case study of the dodo, right? And how dodo can be used as interdisciplinary research within the classroom based on action oriented outcomes, right? And I can actually publish that case study in a research journal, in a Scopus Index journal or Web of Science journal or UGC approved journal. I can publish it in any journal. Journals actually publish not just original or primary research. Okay, they also publish review articles. So the first thing that you can do when you're publishing is look at a book review or a film review or a review article. The review articles are less than 1,500 words, sometimes less than 1,000 words. So they are more doable. So let me give you an example. Suppose you want to publish in a Scopus Index journal in India, say Rupkatha. Rupkatha is a very popular Scopus Index journal, and a lot of students from literature send their articles to Rupkatha, right? So Rupkatha also takes book reviews, right? And you don't have to write 4,000 to 5,000 words. You just have to write about 1,000 to 1,500 words, right? Where you're reviewing a book or a film or a new text, right? And that can be perhaps for a beginner more easily publishable, right? And case studies. We like to think that case studies are only for management studies or for commerce people or faculty working in social sciences. No. Literature students can also, scholars can also work on case studies, right? So, for example, you have developed a new technique to teach, say, adjectives, use of adjectives in the classroom. That can be a case study, and that can be published. A lot of ELT journals actually publish case studies, okay? Empirical data analysis. So, for those of you who are working in English language teaching, you can just take your classrooms or your classes, your students, right, as a sample size, say 50 to 100 students, right? And you can actually, develop an empirical, research model based on your teaching. And that becomes your action research. And you publish the findings in a reputed journal. Methodologies, you can even publish a methodology. Say, suppose I want to use discourse analysis to analyze a particular text. And how I'm applying that methodology. Discourse analysis is a method, right? But I'm going to, for example, use feminism as a methodology. So discourse analysis and feminism, right? I'm going to analyze how effective discourse analysis is to look at feminist writing. That can be a methodological paper, right? So the use of methods and methodologies can be published, okay? You need not even publish the findings. Just talk about how you're applying a certain methodology using certain methods onto a certain text. Perspectives, opinion pieces can also be included, right? This is usually sought by journals from experts, right? It will take some time before somebody asks you for an opinion piece or a perspective, right? But you will eventually get there. But you can still do it as a beginner if you want to give an opinion on something, right? Say, suppose you want to talk about the national education policy, right? And you want to, as an English teacher, you want to respond to the new education policy that is introduced by the government. You can write an article and send it to a journal, right? Yeah. So these are certain very generic and basic writing skills for journal articles. Okay, I think most of you, follow these things, right? It should be clear, easy to read, use concise sentences, grammatically correct language, and use of vocabulary from the chosen discipline or domain. This is very important, provided you are publishing in your discipline. But if you're doing something interdisciplinary, you may want to break down that. Okay, structured writing with logical flow of ideas, and if required, especially English language teaching and other empirical data can be put down, right, in the form of tables, charts, and graphs and illustrations. Okay. So we all know these things, right? We follow the style sheet recommended by the journal. So many journals which actually publish articles in literature, right, actually use the APA style. They don't use the MLA style, which we normally use as research scholars. So be open to experimenting with different style sheets and use a very strict anti-plagiarism policy on yourself, right? Right. So go through, Grammarly is a very good website for both grammar and quality check, right? And of course, we all have Turnitin and other softwares subscribed by our institutions, right? Yeah. So this is very important, right? Identifying the right kind of journal, right? And how do you do this? You do that by reading the articles of that journal, not by somebody says, okay, you send it to that journal. No, you need to read the latest articles published by a particular journal to understand what kind of articles are accepted by that journal, right? Including the kind of language, the structure of the article, right? Some journals want you to have a very, they want you to have subheadings. They want you to have very numbered subheadings. And they want you to have very, very clear, clearly documented, sometimes in bullet points, right? Objectives and outcomes, right? Whereas some other journals might, it's okay for them to, if you write a long essay in many paragraphs without too many subheadings, they are fine with it. But please go through the journal to see what kind of articles they will accept, right? Complete reading and review of literature. Finish that first, right? Don't start writing and then start looking for literature review, right? That's not going to work. Write core arguments and analyze data and findings first, right? So you have to write the core of your paper, the core arguments of your paper have to be written first. Don't write the introduction first. Because what happens is, like it happened with your dissertation, PhD dissertation, what happens is when you write the introduction first, you will feel like going back to it and changing things again and again and again. And that can be very disorienting. So finish, I'm sorry, there is a typo here. So first write your, finish your literature review, finish all your review, right? Sit down and write the most important part of your article. And then you can give it an introduction. The last thing that you have to write is your abstract. The abstract may be the first thing that you see in a journal when you read the article, but it is the last thing that you have to write. Because the abstract is a snapshot of your article. And unless your article is fully written, you cannot write a good abstract, right? And the abstract is very, very important because the first thing that the review committee in the journal, right, will look at is your abstract, okay? Yeah, use writing tools. Don't shy away from using writing tools. For example, Grammarly. See, I make a lot of grammatical errors even after so many years of teaching English. Because English is after all a foreign language, right? So there's nothing wrong in using writing tools. So you can go to Purdue OWL, which is a very good writing source for researchers, especially first-time researchers who are writing for the first time, or who are getting into research writing for the first time. Peer review, and peer review here means that you talk to people, right, your colleagues, your friends who are in the same area of research, or perhaps who are good in English, right? So you get them to read your article. Ask them to review your article before you send it to the journal. Don't shy away from doing this, because sometimes people see errors which you may not be able to see. Because what happens when we write is we get completely involved in the writing process, and it's sometimes it becomes very difficult for us to be objective, to maintain a distance from our own article and find out the mistakes, right? Yeah. So this is writing smart, right? So yeah. So how do I do my homework? How do I identify specific requirements of target journals? The first thing you have to do is to identify target journals. Look up published articles starting with the most recent. So if the journal is say 20 years old, don't start with 1990. Start with 2021 or 2020, because you need to see what they have been publishing of late, recently. Understand the structure or format of articles published and compare it with other journals in the same domain. Sometimes you will have to compare to see how they are different from other journals, right? And be sensitive to nuances of research writing. So, you have to see how somebody has, say, read 3 or 4 articles, you will get to know what kind of articles, right, are accepted by this journal, right? Small nuances you will be able to make out, right? Tiny nuances. Okay, fine. You might say, okay, the conclusion is quite huge, or the conclusion is very concise, and the introduction has been given a lot of importance, right? Or there are a lot of, like I said, subheadings, right? Or the vocabulary is very theoretical, right? Very intensely theoretical. So which means journal requires you to have more methodological rigor, right? But there are some journals where you can actually see literary analysis. I mean, basically a critical summary, not too much of methodology in terms of theoretical frameworks. They're okay with it, right? And the language is very simple and free of theory, right? So you cannot say, right, which journal is going to look for what. But a journal's articles can reveal to you what kind of research writing they expect from you, because not all research writing is the same. No, it is not. Right? So it doesn't mean you have to write like Homi Bhabha or Judith Butler or, you'll understand. Please don't write like that. But make sure that you understand the rigor of research writing, the intensity of research writing, and the methodological framework. How much of methodological rigor is required in the writing. Okay, look up policies regarding ethical information, plagiarism, and important publication policies. Right, so it's important. Sometimes it's very important to read the fine print. The same is true for your LIC policy. The same is true for your bank loan, housing loan. You have to read the fine print. It might be very small and it might be very boring, but you have to read it, right? Yeah. So this is, I'm sorry about this. How do you write an abstract for a research article? Right? This is how you break it down. Okay. So do not write more than 200 to 250 words. Some journals will allow you to go up to 300 words. That's okay. This is including keywords and your title. It should not go beyond text. So the more concise the abstract, the more easy it is to read and also understand what you're trying to do with the article, right? So it's like a small snapshot, right? Before you show them the full picture, you're showing them a snapshot of your article, right? And to a large extent, your abstract will determine, right, whether your article will get reviewed or not, right? If the abstract is bad, it's very, very possible that they may not even go through your article. They might just reject it. They might just send it back. Okay. So what are your hypothesis? Statement of problem can be statement of problem or statement of hypothesis, or your basic research question in literature. Objectives, it need not be broken down, but 3 or 4 sentences on what you want to do in this article, what you're trying to do, methods employed, why is your research significant, right? And of course, keywords, 8 to 10 keywords, not more than that. Okay, right. I have a few models for writing good abstracts. If you want, I can share them with you. I didn't put them here because we don't really have the time. Okay, so these are certain other aspects that you may want to look at. A conflict of interest. So for example, if you are publishing research, say based on some kind of collaborative work that you did with someone else, you have to get permission from them. Okay, say for example, I sat in your class, in one of your classes, right? And based on your teaching methods, I'm writing a paper. I need to take permission from you. Do I have your permission to publish these results based on your teaching practices. Okay. And then, of course, I have to acknowledge, I have to say, Priyadarshini, right, introduced these methods in her class, and this was observed in her class at this level, right? And I have to, I mean, completely acknowledge, right, if there is any conflict of interest, take permission, right? Copyright permissions for any duplicate material. Okay, blind review, blind peer review means you cannot reveal your name or your institution name, right, when you send the article, right? So follow these things. What is the specific article structure, right? What is the formatting requirement, especially for ELT, if you have to use statistics or graphs or tables, right, or graphic content, right? And what is the style sheet? This is very important. Okay. Okay. So the best way to probably sell your paper, right, is to have a good title and a good abstract, okay, with easy to find keywords. I think this is a graphic illustration, which I thought captured it. And of course, you have to write a convincing cover letter. Many journals require you to write a cover letter. Okay, and this is what you cover in your cover letter, right? What is significant? Why is my article significant for publication? Why is it suitable for your journal, whichever journal you're publishing for or in? How is it going to benefit the target audience? How does my article contribute to the field of study? And what is the originality and credibility of research? All of these have to go into the cover letter, right? Depends. Some journals don't require a cover letter, whereas some others do. But if they're asking for a cover letter, please do include that. So the last component, right, is project and consultancy, right? So I've called this projecting because there's a project there, right? Projecting research. Okay. So the first thing that we need to ask is, most of us, especially people who have completed doctoral research, what next? Not all of us can do a postdoctoral, or we may not want to do a postdoctoral, right? And the second question is, how am I going to extend my research to, beyond, to a more inclusive space, beyond the academia in which I conducted my research, right? And I mean, this is a nice, troll again, which I thought is very interesting. So this dog is, looking at something and saying, my research has turned up nothing. How could the ball be in his hand when he clearly threw it? So sometimes we are in this space where we don't know what we are doing after PhD, right? We are lost. For those of us who are lost after doctoral research, the research project is a very nice space to get back into research, right? So how is a research project different from basic research? And are all projects research projects? Actually, I wanted to have a small interaction with you, but then I'll skip that because we don't have a lot of time. Okay, now this is the difference between a research, basic research. It could be MPhil research, PhD research. It could be something as simple as writing an MA dissertation in your MA program. We make our students do that, right? Yeah. So what is research? What is a research project? And what is consultancy, right? So research is basically search for knowledge and scientific investigation on a topic. So what do? It's mostly a one-on-one process, right? Like our PhDs, right? We did it all alone. It was very lonesome, also very lonely for many of us, PhD research, right? I mean, if you're enjoying your PhD research, that's very nice, but that's something that you do on your own. Whereas a project is research that is going to achieve a result, and it's going to achieve specific goals. So research is where you say, okay, I'm going to ask these questions hypothetically, and I'm going to find answers to these questions. So the answers may be right based on the research questions, or you may come up with totally different answers. That's okay. But what do you do with that? You find, right, certain things and you draw certain conclusions and you stop there. So with basic research, you don't apply. Whereas with a research project, you need to tell, right, the funding agency or the organization which is giving you the project, look here, I'm going to achieve these results, and with these goals, specific goals, I'm going to conduct research. Okay, so the first part of a research project is investigation, and the second part is project implementation, meaning to say, how am I going to implement or apply my findings? Otherwise, it cannot be a research project. Of course, all of us have heard of projects, right? So suppose I work in an IT company, I might be sent on an offshore project, so to the US, right, where I have to develop software for a particular client. So what do? I go to that organization, I talk to the people, I see how they work, and based on that, I develop a software. So there are certain particular results that I achieve when my work is done. But a research project is a project that is based on research findings and then so it's not enough to say I'm going to look for these things like you did in your PhD. You also have to say I'm going to apply my findings in these ways. Otherwise, you're not doing a research project. And what is a consultancy? Basically, you become a consultant if you have a few projects already, you have published extensively. Tomorrow, you're going to help someone else with their research. You're going to develop research models, or you're going to give research advice. It could be writing, it could be methodology, it could be implementation of research findings, it could be use of proper data and techniques, it could be any of these things. But with an extensive amount of research experience, the last thing that you do is consultancy, right? It is not to say that you can't be a consultant now, but the more years of experience you have in research, the better chances you have at becoming a good consultant. Okay, so this is where we need to map our research path. This is how we need to map it, right? So we are all here, most of us are here. Either we have completed our PhD, or we are doing our PhDs, or we are publishing research articles, but that's not enough. We need to do all of it. Project finding, may not want to do a project alone. Of course, a lot of us will end up doing a research project, and later, right, I can very confidently say that Dr. Chandrasena can be a research consultant because she has so many publications already. So tomorrow, if I want to invite her, ma'am, can you come and talk to my department about how to publish in the area of English language teaching? If you can help my colleagues understand how to publish in reputed journals, she will come as a consultant and she will give advice on how to publish articles in reputed journals, Scopus Index journals, right? Because it's not a joke to publish so many articles. So ma'am has extensive research. So she is definitely, I don't know if she's already doing it, but she's definitely a consultant. She can be a consultant for many organizations and young researchers, right? Yeah. So I will wind this up quickly. So this is how you need to map out your research plans. So right now we are in 2021. So to become a consultant, established consultant or researcher, project manager, right, with a lot of publications, you need at least 15 years. So this is mostly for young researchers. I will be retiring in 2036, so probably it's not for me, right? But maybe it means that I may have to speed up a little. Not necessarily 15 years. This is the longest, right? But this is how we grow as researchers, right? So first we start with basic research, right? Then we get a few research projects and consultancies and publications, and then you become a consultant, right? Yeah. So these are some very important basic research projects that all of you can apply for, both young. If you're young researchers, meaning to say, if you have just started teaching 2 or 3 years into teaching, you can actually collaborate with senior professors and apply for a project. One is University Grants Commission, right? The other one is National Human Rights Commission. I'm actually developing a directory for my department on research projects. If you want, if you would like me to share it with you, or if you feel the need for it, please tell me. I will be more than happy with you, happy to share the entire directory of research projects. Okay? Yeah. So this is Indian, this is very important. ICSSR. ICSSR is probably one organization which gives you the maximum amount for all kinds of research related activities, right? And you can apply, even if you're a deemed university, you can apply. Okay. These are just snapshots of the website. Okay. Indian government, right, gives you research and development funding schemes are there under the central government agencies, right? So these are some of the areas of, and funding organizations, right? So language and education, social linguistics, applied linguistics, syntax, morphology, all of this. This is very important. And Actually, ICSSR is giving funding for two things. One is if you want to have a 10 to 12 days research methodology workshop in your university, right? It will give you up to 5 to 10 lakhs, 5 to I think 15 lakhs it will give for you to develop, I mean, if you want to do a faculty development program in research methodology, right? Training and capacity building, it's called, right? Especially for research methodology, they are giving you funding, right? You can apply for it. You have to apply for it at least 6 months in advance. The second one is if you want teachers to get training and capacity building in any of these areas, there is a call for projects and programs in ICSSR. This is the most recent one. American Literature, Cultural Studies, Disability Studies, ELT, Eco-Criticism, Film and Media Studies, Fashion Studies. See there, right? Life writing. So suppose you want to conduct, a conference on life writing. You can apply to ICSSR, right? And you will get funding for conducting about 5 to 10 days of a workshop, right? Or a seminar, right? You can look up the website, ICSSR website, right? Or if you want the link, I can share it with you. I can also share the link for IELTS, right? Which is obviously for English language testing, right? International testing agencies like the IELTS also give you funding for developing content for research, okay? And then these are some of the international agencies. International Development Research Center, Ford Foundation, Canada Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, Australian Research Council. There are many more. It might interest you to know that Microsoft India, I mean, especially India, what else? A few other leading IT companies, right, multinational companies are actually promoting research in humanities and social sciences, right? They will give you funding. You can conduct research, okay? So a lot of NGOs also give you, funding, right? Yeah. So this is what is very important right now. I'm sorry, it's not, yeah. So networking, right? So what is networking? It's not collecting contacts. Networking is about planting relations. It's not who you know, it is who knows you. So you have to start developing networks, not just among other departments, but among other universities, right? Especially, foreign universities, right? I mean, if you want to do a research project, right, say with somebody in an international university, right, there are a lot of international funding agencies which give you, funds for collaborative research projects. You could try doing that, right? A lot of universities have started doing these things, right? You don't have to sign an MOU, you just have to apply, right? So 2 or 3 faculty members come together from different universities or from different disciplines and they apply for projects, right? So these are certain models, right? I mean, what is the criteria for evaluation of project proposals? Okay. Yeah. So you don't apply to one agency only, apply to 3 or 4 different agencies or apply for 3 or 4 different projects. Then you will end up getting one, right? It's not like you apply for a project and you get it immediately. That also is a process that we need to learn, right? Yeah. So your team is very important. The quality of the project is very important. This is very important. Right now, UGC is promoting this active involvement of junior researchers, which means that today, if I'm doing a research project, I might want to take somebody who has very few years of research experience, right? And collaborate with that, because this is a model which allows you a non-hierarchical approach to research, right? So if I'm a new teacher or a new researcher, I can team up with a senior professor and conduct research. This is very important, especially for foreign projects. You need to say how your project adds value and what is the broader impact of bilateral cooperation. So if I'm, say, working on a Canadian, project, I need to tell the funding agency in Canada that, my research is going to improve the bilateral relations between India and Canada. I have to do that. Otherwise, why will they give me funding, right? Yeah. So this is very important. You need to have an honest sales document. It might sound like a marketing strategy, but that is what projects are for. See, project proposals are about 3 pages long, not more than that. Not more than that. So it's not so difficult to write a project proposal because it is more focused, right? I have a few examples of project proposals and formats for writing project proposals. If you are interested, I can share them with you. Okay, so this is the basic template for a research proposal. Okay, it's already 3:20. Okay, I'll just wind up in some time. I'm almost done. So this is very important. See, most of us shy away from diagrammatic representations and graphs and bar charts, pie charts. But when you're applying for a research project, it's very important that you include these kinds of models, right? Because it's a 3-page document. And the more diagrammatic, the more logical your flow of ideas, right? Your entire proposal can be encapsulated in this one diagram. You see, inputs, resources, activities, outputs, outcomes, short and long term. You need to project it this way. So what the agency or the organization will do is they will have a look at these kinds of charts, right? And when things are more diagrammatic and logical, there is a higher chance that you might get the project, right? So it's not like your PhD proposal where you write 30 pages, out of which 15 pages is your literature review. You don't have to include your literature review here, right, in your project proposal. And this is how a project proposal application and approval process happens. And let me give credit to the Center for Research Projects, Christ University, because I have taken these slides, especially the diagrammatic slides, this one, they are all taken from the Christ University Center for Research Projects. Okay, so let me give credit to the team there. This is how, I mean, for example, I was trained in writing project proposals, right? So this is how it happens. You see, this will take minimum 6 months. Minimum 6 months. It can take longer. Okay, right, depending on the organization. So the credibility of the applicant is very important. Please make sure that you have a web presence, all of you. Make sure that you have a Google Scholar account. Make sure you have an account on the Vidwan portal. Make sure that some of the work that you have done appears online, because the first thing that they will do is to Google you up and see whether you have a record, a track record, right? What is your expertise, right? That is where your publications matter. And let me give you this very, very important tip, right? Getting a research project is a very interesting way of completing your publications or doing your publications, because then what will happen is you don't have to sit down and think about what will I write a research article about. Your research articles will naturally flow from your research project, right? So as part of your research project, you also have to publish, right? So you might get 2 or 3 publications in reputed journals out of your research project because it is very contemporary. In more contemporary your research, right, more likely it is to be published, right, by a reputed journal, right? Because everybody looks at contemporary research, right? Yeah. So especially English language teachers, we can do a lot of things here. So this is very important. Visibility as a scholar, your web presence is very important. See? Also the kind of journals in which you have published, ethical consideration. So if you have published in journals which don't have a good repute, I mean, that is why they say publish in Scopus Index journals, or at least UGC approved journals. Okay, there are a lot of journals where, you know, you can publish within 2 days. You have to pay 2,000 rupees. They will publish your article in 2 days. There will be no review processes. These are money-making agencies. Please be careful. It's not just about, it's okay if your article gets published. But tomorrow, if it appears on your CV or it appears online, I mean, it may not be a very good thing for you, right? Because you have published in a journal of disrepute, which is, I mean, of course, a lot of Scopus Index journals also charge money. That is okay. For example, if you want to publish in Sage, you will have to, you know, there is a publication fee and it's very huge, right? So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about journals which claim that they are UGC, you know, approved. But please go through the UGC care list. Go to the UGC website, look for the UGC care list, right? And register. You have to sign in. You have to create an account and then you will be able to access the categories. You have category A and you have category B. Previously, they used to have A, B, and C, right? So category A and category B, right? And if you don't find the journal in any of those categories, please do not publish in that particular journal, because I mean, you may actually end up losing in the long run. Although for that moment you will feel happy that your name has appeared, your article has appeared, it's available online. Okay. Yeah. So this is very important. Reflect, plan. I'm sorry about this typo. Act and reflect. So basically, this is how we work on research projects, right? So first you look at the university websites, funded projects, CSR, corporate social responsibility. I said a lot of companies are actually giving funding for humanities and social sciences. Look for their call for proposals and look at their completed projects, right? And you may also want to visit government organizations and their websites, industries, right? And you have a mentor, right? Somebody like, who's senior and who can help you with research projects. Like have a consultant in the department, a research consultant who can help you with research projects, research publications. That really helps, especially for people who are just setting out on research. Okay, so thank you. That's my last slide. I will stop sharing. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. Sorry, I've taken more time than required. I hope that's all right.
Thank you so much for enlightening us, ma'am. You have shared a lot of information. We will go ahead and take some time for questions now.
Questions? Yes, yes. Thank you for all your feedback. Okay. I'm so sorry. This happens, especially on Google Meet. I don't know why it happens. I haven't fixed it. If I put on full slide or full screen mode, the slides do not change. That usually happens. I'm sorry about it. Yes. Okay. Doctor, you want to know which research journal are you talking about? Are there no questions? Dr. Saranya, are there questions or I don't know if you're able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, good evening, ma'am. This is Shashireka, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to know the clarification of quantitative and the qualitative method of research, ma'am. Can you
Okay.
give the
Okay. See, what is your area of research, Dr. Shashirika?
not Dr. Shashireka, ma'am, Shashireka only.
Okay, sir. Yeah, yeah.
I want to do the quantitative research, ma'am. So we
Okay.
have
Is your
to
field ELT or linguistics, or what is your field of research?
creativity of language and literature, ma'am.
Okay, okay.
Pandemic.
See, it depends on what you want to do about it. See, your methods will depend on what your research problem is for to a large extent. For example, uh, you're saying creativity, right? So if
Yes,
you're
ma'am.
looking at, say, writing skills,
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
So if you're analyzing writing skills or you're analyzing use of vocabulary in certain
Vocabulary.
writing practices,
Yes, ma'am.
what you will do there is you will look at a sample size, right? You will look at say okay, you say I'll look at 50 students
Okay.
and I will see how creatively they are using English vocabulary to write something. Okay, so
Okay.
that requires a quantitative method, right?
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah, but if you are working on literature, right? If you're doing critical analysis or if you're applying a theoretical framework or a methodology to analyze a particular text,
Yes,
that
ma'am.
may not involve quantitative methods. Okay. But the fields in English departments which require quantitative research are largely linguistics, ELT, sometimes cultural studies, right? Especially ethnographic research. Suppose I'm going to look at, migration of tribes, okay? And I'm basically working in cultural studies, because cultural studies is also now part of English studies, right? So I might use the interview method. I might create a survey, right? Or I might draw up a questionnaire, right? Which I want them to fill up or answer, right? All of this data is collected and then it is processed using a lot of different quantitative methods. So if you are using statistics, then you will go for a software like SPSS, for example. It's a very popular software. So especially interdisciplinary research, which involves the social sciences, right, or other disciplines along with humanities, you might want to use quantitative methods. Okay. Yeah. So if you want, you can request your university to conduct a separate workshop or a faculty development program on quantitative methods for English teachers or English researchers, right? So somebody may be able to help you there. I'm not much of a quantitative research methods person, right? But make sure that if you're collaborating with other departments, make sure that you have somebody who is good with quantitative methods, so that you do the qualitative analysis and then someone else does the quantitative analysis and it becomes a collaborative work. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Some of you are asking for details of projects, right? Yeah. Reputed journals. I will share all of this with you. Can you give me, say, 4 to 5 days time? Because I'm still compiling the directory. I will be able to share this with you. I will share it with Dr. Chandrasena. Is that okay?
Thank you, ma'am. Participants, if you have any questions, you can ask her.
Sushma madam, good afternoon. It was a wonderful session.
Yes, sir.
Very well presented, madam. My sincere appreciation to the Department of English. I always come on. I represent the Department of Hotel Management, and you know.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And I think I missed the lunch also. I was supposed to have lunch, so
oh my goodness.
So nice.
Okay.
Ma'am, like to know you wanted to collaborate with some of the department. You mentioned that public administration, economics during the initial session. We have a Department of Economics, Public Administration, Social Work. It's just a new department, Social Work and Public Administration, just the second year. We're entering into second year.
Okay.
If you just, I think I will talk to Madam and get your number, and we'd like to connect with you on working on some projects.
Sure, sir, sure. But a lot of research is happening around food, especially sustainable, ecosystems and food, for example, right? We are all going, since you're from hotel management, I'm just giving you an example. So we are all going back
as well, ma'am. They are related to culture as well. The food.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. So basically, we are now going back to, for example, millets and organic produce, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So, like Dr. Chandrasena is saying, right, we are going back to our cultural roots, actually, right?
Yes.
If you look at the whole economics of millet production and consumption, it was actually agricultural farmers and laborers who used to eat millets.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yes.
It was after we got colonized, that is when everything became whitewashed. We started eating white rice. We had the concept of processed refined flour, right?
Okay. Yes.
And then, of course, our rice was also polished after the white people, within quotes, came in, right? So now we realize that we need to go back to our ecosystems. We go back to our seasonal fruits. There is a lot of intersectionality today between, like ma'am said, food, culture, economic sustainability, organic farming, and ecosystems. Right. So in fact, you can you can get people from literature, you can get people from cultural studies, you can look at people who are especially working on economics of food production, right? and of course public policy, right? So all of these departments can come together with hotel management. That would be very good.
I wanted to add one more thing. We just, I think, 4th June, there was a white paper on millets. I mean, I can share the details with you.
Okay.
You can also present a paper on that. It's since you mentioned about this. It's launched by Mr. Abhidab.
In fact, there is a new discipline emerging in English departments. It's called food studies. Basically, it has to do with culinary narratives, we call it, right? Narrativizing food, right? And how food becomes integral to identity, to culture. It becomes integral for an understanding of race, of gender, of sex, right? All of these things we are doing in English departments now. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for attending this session, sir. Prabhu, sir, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. It looks like we have covered all our questions.
Thank you, madam. Sorry, sorry, I didn't know that it's put up. I mean, my cat was just on my laptop, so it just put up my audio, my mic, muted my mic, madam. Sorry, I couldn't respond to you. Sushma, madam, I thought I was talking, so I thought you were listening, but my cat on top, I mean, it was just crossing my laptop, so it just put.
Oh, okay. You have a cat. Okay, that's interesting.
Very sorry, very
okay,
sorry.
So.
No, this white
no
paper.
Problems.
No, the government has launched a white paper on millets. I don't know if you have listened to that. I will share the.
I did listen to that part. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
madam. And we also worked with the cultural related thing. We did one event in Punjab. We brought in all the international chefs to do their own country cuisine. So there are a lot to write. There is slow food concept we have.
Oh,
I will share a lot of
information
with you. Maybe you can, with Chandrasena madam also, they can all write some literature on that.
Thank you, sir.
Definitely, sir. Definitely.
Thank you so much, madam. Thank you, Chandrasena madam. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome,
I think all of us would like to work on food, right? I don't think there's anybody who doesn't like food. So
yes,
we'll do that.
And we also launching culinary arts program, new program coming up for 3-year course.
Oh.
So,
okay.
in fact, I came to Christ University 2011. We launched a program called Hans Buskins, and there's a competition in the kitchen with the madam and all of them in the department. I coordinated an event with Christ in the 2011.
Oh, wonderful, sir. Yeah.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
So maybe we can do something together later. Yeah.
Yes, madam. We are actually all of us in the, we are all more into cooking, culinary, but we are very weak in research. We have wanted to share with you open. I think these kind of sessions will give us a lot of learning to us.
Sure, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So I'll put my email ID here in the chat box if you want to reach out to me, any of you. You can mail me, right? And if you want my number, that I can give you my WhatsApp number. Please feel free to contact me. Don't hesitate.
Thank you, ma'am. So sweet of you. Ma'am, is there anything else you want to cover before I wrap up?
No, actually, I think I overshot the time limit. Yeah, that's about it, ma'am. Yeah. But I'll be more than happy to share, details on projects and journals. If you want to reach out to me later, I can do that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And now I would like to call our respectable Deputy Head Department of English, Dr. Karpagavadivu, to deliver a vote of thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Happy evening to all. It is a privilege and a great joy for me to extend a vote of thanks to all the good souls who contributed to making this online guest lecture on WAPS and WEFTS, weaving research culture into academic fabric, a grand success. I would like to thank our Honorable President, ACS Arun Kumar, for his greatest support and his guidance. Our sincere gratitude to our Provost, Dr. Gopalakrishnan, Vice Chancellor, Dr. Geeta Lakshmi, for their encouragement. I wish to thank Dr. D.B. Javaraj, Junior Joint Registrar, E&S, for extending his constant support for our department. I would like to thank Dr. R. Pushkala, the Literary Seminary, Dr. Mary Thomas, Dean, Department of English, Dr. M. Chandrasena Rajeshwaran, Head Department of English, for their guidance. At the outset, I thank our guest speaker, Dr. Sushma V. Murthy, Associate Professor, Department of English and Cultural Studies, Christ College. We are really enlightened with your knowledge and presence, ma'am. I wish to thank the faculty members of our department for their cooperation. Before concluding, let me express our sincere gratitude and appreciation to the organizing committee and all the students of Department of English. Thank you, ma'am.
Let me just thank Dr. Chandrasena for inviting me here, and to the Department of English at Dr. MGR Institute, and all the heads of the department of different campuses, the registrar, the vice chancellor, and all those of you who organized this event, and of course all the scholars and faculty members who very actively participated. Thank you for giving me this small window to share my experiences in research, and hopefully, I hope that you have found some resources or some insights which you can take forward into the academic community. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Thank you for
Thank you,
accepting our
ma'am.
invitation
Wonderful
and being
presentation.
with us, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Your entire knowledge has become ours. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot. Please do keep in touch, and we can collaborate in future. That would be nice. Yeah.
Thank you very
Professor,
much, ma'am.
thank you, sir, for coming here. And
No, thank you so much,
yes,
madam. I
sir.
think wonderful. I never. I mean,
You are
I
always
also
talking
discussed.
about this collaboration. We will definitely think about it,
Yes,
sir.
madam. We discussed before the second wave. Correct. Yes, madam. And thank you for this wonderful session, madam. And once again, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Ma'am, may I leave the session, or
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you,
yeah.
ma'am. You can.
Okay.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you. Take care, and thanks again.
Yes,
Take care.
ma'am.
Bye.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very